Hey, you guys, how's it going? Things look a little bit different here because I moved some stuff around and turned this storage space that I was using a corner of into like I threw a bunch of stuff out and rearranged some stuff, and now I have more space and I have a standing desk when I want to stand. I'm sitting right now. But anyway, so I've got to get used to this new setup because I got a desk over here and my computers are over here. Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, it's I have so much more space. I don't know what to do with myself. So I've got to get used to I've got to get used to this new setup. So it's going to be a work in progress tonight, but it'll be fun. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. It is week 2 of our book club for generations by William Strauss and Neil Howe. Woohoo! Yay! And for those of you that don't have a copy of the book, you can get one online for free. If you still need that link, let me know and I will put it in the chat. Hello, Danny. Hello, HDJKSA52. Grendelson's in the house. Hello. Kalina7126. Hello, hello, hello. And we have Kitaya80 here today, too. All right. So glad you guys are joining me tonight. We're going to have a good time, and I need some fun discussion and some good discussion outside of the world and things that are going on currently. So, oh gosh, I don't think I put this private. I don't think I put this into members. Uh-oh. Hold on. It's been, I did all this since I moved everything around. I am not in my normal routine, and so I didn't post the notification early, and I didn't put this into members only. So give me just a second and I will change this to members only if I can in the middle of it. I guess we'll find out. Visibility, members only. There we go. Hopefully that did it. All right. What up, Kevin? What up, Joseph? What up, Alan? Oh my goodness, your daughter got discharged, Joseph. Glad to hear it. So glad. Go take care of your daughter. I'm so glad to hear that she got out. All right, guys. You ready to read or talk about what we read, I should say? So for this week, we were doing the opening chapter, the very first chapter 1 called People Moving Through Time. And let me bring up my notes. And I sent you guys a few questions last week to think about while you were reading chapter 1. And I also wanted to share kind of what my takeaway was from this and hear what you guys had to say as well. Let me make sure I got everybody in here. Is everybody still here? Because when I changed the visibility to members only, I hope that didn't mess anything up. You have a standing desk that you never stand at, but I love it being adjustable. It does make cleaning nice. And I did stand at it earlier today. It's weird. It's a different sensation to get used to. I'm not used to, if I'm not waiting tables, my work is usually at a chair, at a desk. So it's definitely a change that I've got to get used to, but I really do like it. I like having all the space. Quick question. When am I next on Discord? I'm on Discord tomorrow night. I'm on Discord every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Monday is movie night. Wednesday is Little House on the Prairie night. And Thursday is Incredible Hulk night. So I will be there tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. Grendelson, in reading chapter 1, the biggest thing I took away from it, since I've read it before and was already familiar with it, was that millennials had their generation name before Gen X did. I know, isn't that cool? Strauss and Howe were the ones that coined the term millennial. And this makes sense because when you go with the Generation X dates that they said of 1961 to 1981, and they start millennials in 1982, that theoretically means that the first millennials graduated high school in the year 2000, which is why they got the name millennial. So I think that makes perfect sense, which it just reinforces the definition of Gen X of 61 to 81 for me. But, that's just how I took it. But yes, that's a very interesting thing that we didn't get our name until we got it from Douglas Copeland. Or I don't even know how it stuck because I actually did a video about this And for some reason, I don't know why Copeland's name stuck, but it did. Yeah, Gen X was Douglas Copeland, the writer of Generation X, Tales from an Accelerated Culture. And we're going to watch a couple of interviews from all these people tonight after we get through our book discussion. So we'll put that down, and we're going to get started. So let me get to my notes. So this is kind of a chapter summary of what I wrote down for people moving through time. And we're going to go through this and talk about it a little bit. I'm going to ask you some questions about your guys' takeaway as well. So this chapter, of course, since it's opening chapter, is the foundational introduction to the book's main thesis, which we talked about last week, which is American history can be understood through the lens of generational cycles, where distinct birth cohorts, which are generations or cohorts, progress through their life phases, those fixed life phases of youth and rising adulthood and midlife and elder. So the generations progress through those phases simultaneously while navigating the unfolding timeline of historical events. Strauss and Howe used the where do I have it? Strauss and Howe used the metaphor of a generational diagonal, which I think is really, really cool to illustrate the dynamic. So basically, and on the generational diagonal, instead of saying, my experience as a 20-year-old is not going to be the same as a boomer experience from a 20-year-old, and it's not going to be the same as a millennial as a 20-year-old or a Gen Z as a 20-year-old. Their diagonal, their conceptual grid of their generational diagonal has basically age on a vertical axis, and then the time is like the horizontal axis, and we're moving through time, basically, in unique ways, which shape our individual life cycles and the societal rhythms as well. The chapter draws on contemporary examples. When I say contemporary examples, I mean 1991, since the book was written in 91, to make their theory tangible, and they emphasize how generations interact. They also talk about how each generation inherits endowments from the elders and pass legacies on to the junior generations. From a Gen X perspective, this chapter positions us as a pragmatic, reactive group emerging from the shadows of boomer idealism. We're often portrayed as cynical survivors of neglectful upbringing. So that's kind of how that's how I took them for Generation X in this, is that we are the reactive to what the boomers, the idealism of the boomers. And I love the word cohort too. It's a good word. And I think that our whole entire generation has basically not been defined by, but definitely influenced by boomers in a way that we cannot escape. There is no independence for our generation. Boomers shaped everything about our world, and boomers and GIs, I should say, but definitely boomers, because boomers created the pop culture we were raised on, and they were the ones that were starting to get the divorce rate skyrocketed. They were the ones that neglected their kids and had the latchkey kids. And so everything about our lives foundationally has come from boomer decisions and what they did in the world. Does that make sense? You were born in 82, never understood why you were classified as a millennial. Well, according to Strauss and Howe, they defined you as the very first millennial, 1982, because theoretically 18 years later, you should have graduated high school in 2000. So you'd have been the very first generation to graduate in the 2000s, the new millennium. So that's why they started with 82 as millennials. And that was coined by Strauss and Howe in this book. It is weird that Gen Y never stuck, but I guess Gen Y never stuck because, millennials came first before Gen X, so it just didn't work. Since millennials came first before Gen X got their name, Gen Y just never worked. But then, of course, we got Z, so That is weird. 81, just made it. Good job. Okay. So let me get my notes up here. So yeah, I think they're pretty spot on as far as our generation as a whole being the pragmatic generation, and the reactive instead of the the leaders and the idealists of our parents. Now, of course, not all of us had boomer parents. Some of us had GI parents. And I think that makes a big difference in how the Gen X, your specific Gen X experience would have a lot to do with whether your parents were GIs or whether your parents were boomers. And that's my theory. I don't know if that's 100% true, but I think there's some merit to it. All right. So the Gen X latchkey youth, with their adaptive resilience, reflect broader cyclical patterns, especially as we enter midlife leadership roles in a world where the book predicts face escalating crisis. And I think the book was pretty spot on the escalating crisis. So this chapter opens up critiquing traditional views of history and human development. So they start off with the stories about the World War II veterans at Kennedy's inauguration and then at George H.W. Bush's inauguration. So George H.W. was the last of the GI generation, the last World War II veteran to be president of the United States. After that, it's been boomers. Obama, Xer, boomer, is up for debate. But so, at the opening of this chapter, they're talking about how, the veterans were both inaugurations, but at Kennedy's, they were the young guys. They were the, we're about to build the world and we have all these big goals and plans. And then at HW's inauguration, they were the elders. They were the reflective, the world that they grew up in no longer existed. They had the same experience that we did. So I thought that was very interesting, the way they compared those two. And it was very interesting in the 30 years from 1961 through 1990 and counting, the American presidency has been the exclusive preserve of men who ranged in age from 17 to 34 on Pearl Harbor Sunday, men belonging to what we call the GI generation. Never before in the nation's history has one generation held the White House so long. The boomers were like, hold my beer. Few others have exercised such massive power over public events in each phase of life. That's another thing. GI and boomers have both had massive power in each phase of their lives, and Gen X have never really had any real power in our life phases. We've always been the outcasts or the forgotten or the ignored. From youth to old age, the GIs have been the confident and rational problem solvers of 20th century America, the ones who knew how to get things done. First as victorious soldiers and Rosie the Riveters, later as builders of rockets and highways, lastly as aging presidents in the era of democracy's economic triumph over communism. Woo! But they really thought they had it defeated, didn't they? So, let's get over to, I want to get to where it talks about the diagonal more. Let me go into your comments as well. They call it, in the book, they call it GI, the GI generation, or silent. I'm just going by their definitions. Just like they call us 13 years instead of X, they call them GI instead of silent. So, right? Isn't GI and silent the same? Isn't that what their name is in here, or did I totally make that up? Boom. I'm sorry. Silent. You are right. I skipped it. Thank you. Got a little ahead of myself. So silent. My bad. The GIs were the ones that were born at the beginning of the century. Gotcha. And then fought in World War II. So silent and boomers. My bad. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. I make mistakes sometimes. They're easily skippable. Some would say that about Gen X. Even though I would disagree. All right. So Strauss and Howe proposed the generational diagonal as a better model. Okay, wait. A framework for understanding. Let me make sure I get through my notes right here. Okay. So the chapter opens by critiquing traditional views of history and human development, which focus on linear timelines or universal life stages without accounting for cohort-specific experiences, which is what I was talking about earlier. Instead, Strauss and Howe proposed the generational diagonal. Imagine a matrix where rows represent age brackets and columns represent calendar years. Each generation traces a diagonal path across this grid, experiencing events at particular life phases that imprint lasting peer personalities. So everyone in our generation would be considered, so our Gen Xers are considered a peer personality. So when they talk about that in the book, what they mean is other people in your own generation is your peer personality, which means we have shared attitudes, behaviors, and values formed by being in the same age location during pivotal moments in history and current and events. Now, some people do criticize this because they think it's way too generalized. And can a generation of Americans or of humans, I mean, this is very America focused, but can a generation have shared attitudes, behaviors, and values formed by being in the same age location? Or does it cut down more into geographic location, socioeconomic status, race, gender? Could you cut it down more, or can you be very general about about generations? So what would you guys think about the generalization? So do you think that it's too generalized? Or, because I mean, when you're talking about social science, especially in sociology, you have to, with theories like societal theory, you got to be kind of general. You're on the bell curve, right? And so you're going to have a lot of us here in the middle, and then you're going to have your outliers. Age location. No, age location in time means, so we are all in midlife. We were all in midlife when COVID hit. So that's our age location, is we are midlife at a certain historical event. That's our age location. So we were rising adults on 9/11 in 2001. We were all in our 20s and 30s. So our age location is we're all experiencing something in the same point of our lives. Does that make sense? Let's see. That's a good point, Grendelson. Like macro and microeconomics, cohort behavior can be seen on macro level and micro level. And I think that's a great point, because I do think that you can make macro generalizations about a generation, but definitely we can get into the micro levels of things as well, and things could change and things could get a little bit more nuanced. But here we're talking about generalities. Okay, does that make sense, Keisha? Okay, good. Let's see. Boomers were children or young adults on the day that JFK died. Right. That was their age location. So boomers' age location at JFK was, teens, young adults, children, or children and young adults. Yeah. Because we weren't born yet. or we were babies at the time, depending on who you go by. And in here, we go by 61. So Gen X were babies. We were the youth. Okay. Back to my notes. So on this grid, each generation traces a diagonal path across the grid, experiencing events at particular life phases that imprint lasting peer personalities, shared attitudes, shared behaviors, shared values, formed by being in the same age location during pivotal moments. Here's what I wrote. This diagonal avoids common fallacies, such as assuming all people at a certain age behave similarly, the phase of life fallacy, which was I was talking about before. The way we act in our 40s and 50s is not the same, or experience in our 40s and 50s is not the same as our parents. It's not going to be the same as our kids. And so that diagonal makes sense. And it takes away the phase of life fallacy. And also, it takes away that life cycles are predictable across eras, which is the life course fallacy. We are not going to have the same type of lives. The life cycles are not predictable always among different human beings. People experience things differently, and your generation, I think, definitely has a big influence on that. Historical examples illustrate this. A war might empower a 30-year-old cohort, turning them into heroes, but it could terrify a 10-year-old one, making them cautious. For Gen X, this chapter highlights how our diagonal path through the 70s and 80s, throughout Watergate, the energy crisis, and divorce booms during our youth, fostered a skeptical, self-reliant personality, contrasting with the boomer diagonal of the 1960s idealism. Does that make sense? Let me go back to that one more time. So a war could empower a 30-year-old, but terrify a 10-year-old, the cohorts. And if a war breaks out when you're 30, it could turn your generation into the heroes. But the 10-year-olds, the generation that are 10, it can make us cautious in our future life decisions and life choices. So, and our personal experience in our diagonal that we've experienced has created our skepticism, our generation's self-reliance, and it contrasts with our parents. So that's kind of what this chapter is saying. Yeah, no Gen Xer fought in Vietnam, if you think about it. That is true. Yeah, because Vietnam was over by, 73, 74? I think 73. So, yeah, it would have been impossible. No matter how you describe Gen X, we did not fight in Vietnam. But we did fight in the Gulf War. That was our war. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, and that's a good point. The pictures of people our age now, like Archie Bunker was 48 when All in the Family started. So he was in his 50s throughout the run of that show, which, is just like mind-blowing. The living date is in fact JFK. I contend if you can remember JFK being assassinated, you are a boomer. If not, you are Gen X. And I think I think you're right there. And again, you're defining by experience instead of specific dates, which is why, even though I say 61 to 81, I still ish it a little bit, because I have a hard time being like, if you were born on January 1st, 1961, that means you're Gen X, or that means you're a boom. You know what I'm saying? So I think experiences are the best way to go about definitions ultimately, but it's good to have a little bit of a guidepost. The last chopper was out in 1974. Okay. I knew it was around that time. Basically, Vietnam events experienced differently for different cohorts. Exactly. And you can apply that to any event. You can apply that to right now. What is going on in the United States right now, and how we are experiencing as Gen Xers is very different from how the boomers are experiencing it, for how the millennials are experiencing it, and for how Gen Z and Gen Alpha are experiencing it. So, and you got to think, and that's something to really consider when we're making laws, when we're voting, when we're talking to our kids or our parents about things that are going on. Where you are in life when things happen makes a big deal, and your experiences throughout your life, influence, how you get through something, and how you react, or how you deal with different things in the world. So I think this is very, insightful, because I don't know, this is probably going to make me sound terrible, but I probably was in my 20s before I really understood and realized and thought, not everyone experiences things the same way I do. Not everyone reacts the same way I would. Not everybody, my feelings and thoughts and experiences are not universal. And that might sound horrible to say, that I didn't realize that until I was in my 20s. But I think that comes with the developing mind. Your brain's not fully developed until, your mid-20s or whatever. And I think that just to get outside of yourself and experience agency and self-awareness, and that, oh yeah, not, just because I think that way, or because I feel this way, or because just because I want to be lazy and not go to work today doesn't mean that everybody feels that way. Does that make sense? Yes, and you're correct. And that is, so your feeling is that they labeled the original generation boomers based on the population growth after World War II ended. I think we do call that self-actualization. You're right. It just took me a while to get there. But so your feeling is that boomers were based on population growth. So by that logic and the logic of the somewhat 2-decade cycle, events work. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why Pew Research and Harvard put Gen X at the start of 1965 is because that was when the baby boom turned to a bust. And that's when the numbers started to nosedive. 1965 was one hell of a year in this country. Woo! So, but yeah, and you're right. Yeah, it was totally on population growth. The boom. And why do you think we had such population growth after World War II? I mean, we had a whole generation of men go to war, and tens of thousands of them died on the battlefield in Europe. All the women went into the workforce, not all, but a lot. We had decimated our economy. I mean, granted, we won, I guess, if you want to call it that. But what was it that because right now we're in in our situation, nobody wants to hook up, get married, and have kids. What is it? Why did post World War II? Why did the silent generation and why did the GIs? I'll get my generations right, apparently. Why did they come home and want to get married and have kids? Baby making was encouraged, yeah. So, like, I mean, I think that's interesting that was the reaction of the American people at the end of that fourth turning, at the end of that major catastrophic event, was to come home and make babies. But I don't think that's going to be how things. I mean, could you see a baby boom in the next 10 years, 15 years? Can we, and if so, how can we facilitate that? How can we, I mean, we have some population issues. The 50s were a time of prospering. So many companies were built in the 50s, highways, different businesses emerged. I mean, it was a very booming time for the country, the 50s into the 60s. Rebuild the world. Well, I don't want to rebuild the world in the mold of the good. I just want the USA to be rebuilt in the mold of the good old USA. All right, let's get back to my notes. All right. So, does Gen X's cynical label feel accurate today, especially as we've aged into midlife amid ongoing economic and cultural shifts? All right, let's look at these. Let's look back at the book here for a second, because I want to get where they talked about us. On page 30, at the bottom. So they're describing the different generational trains. I thought that was a really good metaphor for how to describe the different generations, the different cohorts. We're on a track, but we're at different points in the train track, all in our own little cars, each of our generational cars. So it says on the bottom of page 30, the next generational train rolls into the coming of age station, wearing shades. We've always been the cool kids, averting the critical glare of the adult world. Now they're talking about where we're at in 1991, remember. And also, the other thing about Generation X in here that I think is very interesting is the fact that this book came out in the summer of 1991. And, they were talking about how Gen X will soon start to make their cultural mark. And like literally 2 months after this book was published, Nirvana dropped Nevermind and Smells Like Teen Spirit came out. And Gen X started to infiltrate pop culture. So this was this was published right before, Gen X hit the scene real hard as far as, music and movies and things like that, which I thought was very interesting. All right, the next generational train rolls into the coming of age station wearing shades, averting the critical glare of the adult world. We have seen this generation before. These were this I used this line in one of my videos, one of my thumbnails. These were the first babies American women took pills not to have. Rosemary's Baby, the children of sharply rising divorce and poverty rates, pupils in experimental classrooms without walls, latchkey kids, precocious Gary Coleman and Tatum O'Neal, pubescence of the sex-obsessed 70s, Valley Girls, college students criticized by one blue ribbon commission after another, young singles of the post-age social scene. I like this term. Inner city drug entrepreneurs. I like this one too. Boomerang children living at home after college, the best qualified recruits in military history, the hard-nosed invaders of Panama, and the defenders of Persian Gulf oil. Many people do forget that Gen X soldiers didn't have to go into Panama and get Noriega. Y'all remember the Noriega thing in 89? I think they played music. They played some music for him, like for hours to torture him. I gotta find out what it was. Hold on. Now I'm gonna wonder. What music did the USA play to torture Manuel Noriega in Panama? Do you guys remember this? Oh. I Fought the Law by The Clash. You Shook Me All Night Long by AC/DC. Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses and Panama by Van Halen. Let's see. The highway system is something to remember. I agree, and it needs to be improved. The opening of the country was a huge part of opening up culture. Plus, as GIs had experience overseas, they wanted new places to go, making car culture super popular. Absolutely. And I really loved that time. I mean, we only got the end of it in the 70s and 80s, but, getting into the family car, station wagon, or van and, going on a road trip, family vacation, that was the best. Stopping at a rest stop to, eat the sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches out of the picnic basket. Yes, the pill was the main reason why Gen X is smaller in number. And now Gen Z is going to be even smaller. They're being aborted. They're just like skipping the pill. They're just straight up aborting Gen Z. I think it's about 30% is what I read recently, which is wild when you think about it. Yeah, Roe v. Wade. Great playlist. Let's remember that. We're going to play the Noriega playlist. So this is what AI says about it. I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but this is one of those things for some reason I just could never forget. During the U.S. invasion of Panama in 1989, American forces used loud rock and heavy metal music as a form of psychological warfare to pressure Manuel Noriega, who had taken refuge in the Vatican embassy, to surrender. The specific songs played repeatedly by the U.S. military psychological operations unit. Oh my God, did they really rickroll him? Because I didn't see the bottom line here. It goes, I Fought the Law, You Shook Me All Night Long, Welcome to the Jungle, Panama, and Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley. I don't know if that's AI slop or not. That could just be made up. I don't remember them rickrolling, but I could be wrong. Oh, man. Yeah, he really did. He sure did. Route 66 ends in Santa Monica. Yeah, it goes right through, like, Route 66 is right through where I live. So, yeah, Chef's Kiss if they rickrolled him. Yep, it is. Yep, true story. Don't get me started on all that. Okay. Okay. In the late 1960s, 21-year-olds were considered radicals, the conscience of America, and they drew the respect of the adult world they were attacking. Today, 1991, kids in their early 20s, Gen X, comprise America's most Republican-leaning age bracket. They associate smoothly and compliantly with elders who, for their part, express disappointment in how they're turning out. To date, this generation has no consensus name. We label it the 13th generation, partly for the gauntlet its members see in its bad reputation, also in recognition that it is the 13th to know the American nation and flag. So that's what they said in chapter 1 about us. You were 20 in 91, so they were really talking about you. Hardcore. I also like what they had to say about the millennials. The last train comes in, still taking on passengers, with adult America heralding its departure. These tots, which are millennials, are entering a childhood today's collegians would hardly recognize. Check out their brief life cycle, and you'll find the first test tube babies, everybody's baby Jessica McClure, rescued from a Midland well, super babies, the diapered stars of Raising Arizona and Three Men and a Baby, KinderCare Kids, Baby M, and Hillary Morgan at the center of custody disputes, inner city kindergartners in uniform, Little Dooney saved in the crack house, George Bush's Hispanic grandchildren, and the high school class of 2000, whom President Bush, former Surgeon General C. Everett Koop, and numerous others have already targeted as a smarter, better behaving, and more civic-spirited wave of American youth. Any community trying to treat its children this way in the late 1960s would have been condemned as culturally totalitarian. But in the early 1980s, adults began to look upon childhood quite differently, spawning a new millennial generation, the first of whom will indeed come of age around the year 2000. Whew, they got coddled so freaking much. And I think, as a younger Gen Xer, and this is where we get into the Zennial conversation. I mean, I was right on the cusp of the coddling. They were making so many changes in school. They were taking out the gifted classes and making everything the same, and they were starting to hand out all the participation trophies and stuff like that. They were just starting that when I got out of high school. But yeah, helicopter parents created millennials. Now, do you think that they say they argue in here that well, no, it wasn't in here. I think it was in the fourth turning is here in the updated version. I get confused where I read stuff, so I apologize if I hit on something that's not in here. But they say that older Generation X, because they were Rosemary's Baby, because they were latchkey kids, because they were ignored so much, they were the ones that gave birth to the first millennials, the coddled millennials. The pendulum swung in the other way because they were so ignored and neglected that they helicoptered their kids and overdid it. So it was the oldest Gen Xers having the oldest millennials. But it kind of changes a little bit throughout the Gen X lifespan. But do you think Gen X were the ones that coddled the millennials, or do you think it was the boomers? I love the gifted classes. They took them out my sophomore year in high school. We protested, but we did not win that argument. Yeah, so it was us that coddled the millennials. So we did this. It wasn't just boomers. Both. Okay. Because it really changes, how Gen X was raised really changes between 61 and 81. So I got a very hybrid parenthood and childhood, because it's Zennial. It's Gen X-ish, pretty much, with a hint of millennial. And I hate to say it, but it's true. And you're probably right. Let's see. By the way, Zennial, not something they will go for. For them, these demarcations of age groups are fixed. Really? If they're fixed or not, I don't care. Yeah, I mean, the boomers have pretty much been in charge of everything since 1992. So, yeah, they have been all up on Generation X and millennials. Even Gen Z in some ways. I mean, because it's not like we've come out and had all kinds of leadership and influence in this society outside of our tech influence, and that's where Gen X really hits the influence in our culture, is that all of our guys and people our age are tech CEOs. We got the PayPal mafia. Yay, Gen X. The boomers will never let go. Never. All right. Let's see. Yeah, I want to get into this constellation thing. I got to go. I should have made my notes a little bit easier to read. All right. So back in 1991. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. So they had the constellations, the generational constellations. In 1969, there were 7 generations. The missionary elders. And then they had the missionary elders to the emerging boomer youth. Dominant. Okay, wait. Boy, I need to make my notes a lot easier to read. 1991 So the constellation, what they mean by when they have a generational constellation, is all the generations that are alive at that one point in time. So like right now, our constellation would be, I think boomers are the oldest. Are there anybody old? I don't think there's any silent left, is there? I guess maybe might be silents in their 90s. So I guess we would have so the constellation right now would be silent, boomer, Gen X, millennial, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha. Those would be that would be our current generational constellation. No. You do have issues. Centenarians. Okay, so that's silent, right? You look in the book. Silent would be 1925. So 1925 to 1942. So I guess maybe we have a few GIs left. But boy, they would be old. Really, there's 1 million left. Okay. All right. Well, that's pretty crazy that we had that many generations all at once. So that means we have GI, silent, boom, 13, millennial, Z, alpha. So we have 7 generations all at once in our current constellation. I don't know. I think that's very interesting, the way they've really laid this out. I like it a lot. Okay. So what they argue in this first chapter, what Strauss and Howe argue, is that constellations reveal societal moods. So the current constellation that we have, the 7 generations that we have right now, has revealed a mood. I think it has. I think that's safe to say. And those moods will predict shifts. For example, the 1969 constellation set up fueled the boomer awakenings, while the 1991 signaled rising tensions toward a potential crisis. A Gen X lens here invites some reflection. The book describes us as cynical youths absorbing the fallout of boomer excess, their high divorce rates, economic stagnation. But as reactives, we're endowed with survival skills to navigate midlife crisis. Does this resonate with Gen X experiences of being sandwiched between idealistic boomers and optimistic millennials? I don't know. It is weird having the sandwich in between idealistic boomers and optimistic millennials. It's weird. I think we should skip the millennials and go to Gen Z. Well, the older millennials are pretty based, but for the most part. Well, I don't know. Millennials, we need to talk. Oh, there's only 45,000. Wow. Okay, so it won't be long. God, can you imagine what this country is going to be like when the boomers really start to die off? And finally die off. So we and the power, the seats of power that will open up, and how that will happen, how those vacuums will be filled. Ugh. Will it be Gen X? Will Gen Xers start to emerge as leaders, or will it just go straight to millennials? Well, we totally skipped. It's a question I have. Let's see here. Boom. The cycle of generations, recurring types, and social moments. So, also in this chapter, building on the diagonal, the chapter introduces the book's cyclical model. American history repeats in secula, roughly 80 to 100 year cycles akin to a human lifespan, driven by 4 archetypal generations that recur in fixed order. The idealists, the visionary prophets, the reactives, the pragmatic survivors, that would be us, the civics, the heroic builders, that's millennials. Sorry, the idealist, visionary prophets are the boomers, reactive, pragmatic survivors are Gen X, civic is the heroic builders, that's millennials, and the adaptive, flexible conformist is Gen Z. These alternate between dominant, idealistic, and civic, who drive major change, and recessive, reactive, and adaptive, who refine or react to them. I think there was a glad you won't be here. Yeah, they are starting to die off. The boomers are. But I think it's very interesting that, and as we go through this book, they're gonna make their argument here about all these different 4 archetypes of generations. And so basically, we have got basically the millennials and the boomers are fucking shit up, and Gen X and Gen Z are gonna have to fix it. Basically, is how I read that. Yeah, Gen X reactive is correct. I agree. Oh, so we're recessive, you know. Well, hey, Dale, I didn't know you were up there. Hey, bud. Oh, he's sneezing. He jumps on top of the shelf up there, likes his little spot up there to sleep. Yeah, and they're spot on in every freaking argument. They really are. As we go through this book, it's gonna blow your mind. So, generational types and life cycles. Each type aligns with specific historical roles. For instance, civics, like the GIs, come of age during crisis, building institutions in midlife. Reactives, like Gen X, endure underprotected youth, becoming resourceful but alienated adults who critique elder excesses. Yep, we were destined from birth to be reactionary in nature. Yep. Social moments. Cycles are punctuating by alternating crisis, secular unifying events like wars, and awakenings, spiritual value shifting revivals. Crises empower civic risers to rebuild society. Awakenings inspire idealist youth to challenge norms. Example, WW2 Crisis featured civic GIs, youths as heroes, reactive lost generation midlifers as gritty managers, idealist missionaries as elder visionaries, and adaptive silence as silent children. Yep. It's going to be fun. Now, I hope this isn't getting too boring for y'all. I really worked hard trying to get these notes together, but I'm starting to confuse myself a little bit. So I hope it's coming out okay. I hope I'm making sense. All right. Figure 1, 2. All right. Yeah, figure 1, 2 shows all of the shows how they described all the different birth years at the time, which is where we get the 61 to 81 for us. They have millennials 82 to 2003 in this book. I don't remember if they changed it for the fourth turning is here or not. I need to go back and look. But in today's world, millennial stops in mid 90s, mid to late 90s, and Gen Z starts there. And I think that's, for me, I agree that millennials should stop in around mid 90s, because if you can remember a world before 9/11, I think that would make you millennial. Gen Z has no memory of the world before 9/11. I think that's a pretty, distinct marker. A lot of definitions to remember. And there's no law that says we have to remember all of this. Again, we're just reading this for fun and to just get some new ideas and new perspectives on things. But it's just a different way of looking at, like, for me, I'm using this as a way to kind of relate to people that aren't in my generation, to relate to my parents and to relate to younger people, because their experiences are completely different. And I really apply this with my kids. Well, my niece and nephew, who are my kids, who are 20 and 19. And I just really try to think of what the world would be like if I never knew a world without the internet, or never knew a world without social media, or had my junior high and high school experience completely wrecked by COVID, or, like, how would that affect how they're processing things and how they're reacting to things, whether it be current events or politics or just life in general, life choices, major life events. I mean, I had to force them to get driver's licenses, which and jobs, which was shocking to me. But like, it's really hard to it's really hard to put myself in their shoes, because, and it's hard, and I also try to think about when I'm telling them stories about my childhood, about what I endured. They're just not going to relate or understand, and probably not care most of the time. But yeah, so that's kind of where my head is at when I'm reading this book about how I relate to other people in different generations in my own life. So Uber Lyft, right? Yeah. Not around enough youngsters. They're a mystery to me. No kids. And I don't have kids either. This is my niece and nephew. That is my only connection to, like, kids. But these kids are 19 and 20. So as far as, like, little kids, my only experience with little kids these days are, watching YouTube videos about how 40% of Gen Z can't read at a proper grade level. Or Gen Alpha, the little kids. Like, the little kids can't read. They don't want to read. And in this world of AI, why should they even bother? That's their reasoning. Why should they go through a school system like we've set up, where they're, doing long division and diagramming sentences. I loved long division and diagramming sentences and writing in cursive growing up, but that's not the world these kids are going to live in. And it's like, how do you teach personal skills, or like skills, to kids when they're just like, AI will do it all of it for me. It'll think it for me. It'll do the math. It'll spell it. It'll write it. It'll read it. It'll tell me what it read. COVID really affected them. Yeah. Yeah. It's nuts. Yeah. And yeah, everybody who was in school during COVID got royally fucked. Like, my poor Max didn't get a prom, didn't get a graduation. Like, they didn't get, like, homecoming was stopped for a couple of years. Now, granted, our state didn't cut them out of school, but once they shut down schools, I switched over to homeschooling and just homeschooled them and got them, instead of waiting around for whatever the schools decide. We just decided just to homeschool them and graduate them that way. But like, it just wrecked it. It just wrecked them. I'm a grammar nerd. I always found diagramming sentences like a fun puzzle, like a fun game. Yep. It's gonna be, everything. The next 10 years are just gonna be wild. And I know that, AI isn't really progressing, I think, the way that they thought. It's doing weird things now, but it's still gonna change the world of working and money and just human development. If we have a whole generation of kids that don't care about learning anything because the computer knows it, then, like, what does that mean for societies? What does that mean for humanity? You were a lit major? Nice. California shut down completely. Wow. Yeah, California was doing some crazy things for a long time. Yeah, our human brains can't evolve fast enough. I don't know. I mean, I just don't know what it's going to mean. I'm starting to get really concerned about the future as far, like where humanity is headed, where our country is headed, where what this means for the globe. Really, it's just nuts. Anyways, I've been so like I'm to the point now, and I already live in the 80s and 90s in my mind most of the time because of my channel and what I do. But I'm starting to get to the point where I just want to live in the 80s and 90s constantly. Like, I don't want to read social media. I don't want to watch the news. I don't want to know what's going on outside of my community. And I know, and in my head in the 80s and 90s. And I know that sounds kind of sad, but like, I just want to go back to the world I grew up in because this world sucks. Oh my god. I don't know. I'm just gonna build my little Nat 80s town and just stay there for the rest of my life. Okay. So, this chapter also explored how generations interact across the diagonal. Elders shape youth nurturing, which influences how juniors parent the next cohort, creating a feedback loop. For example, overprotective GI parents produced idealistic boomers who then underprotected Gen X, leading to our cohort's independence, but also higher risks. Endowments are the gifts each type leaves. Idealists offer principles. Reactives offer liberty. Civics offer community, and adaptives offer expertise. Spiraling societal progress by correcting prior imbalances. So we have things to give, but here's the thing. This to me is only in a good, healthy, functioning society. Have you seen? Oh, it's time. It's gummy and smoking time. All right, I gotta stop being so serious with this book club. I'm taking this way too serious. But I'm gonna finish up the chapter and see you see any comments from you guys. Then we're gonna watch a little bit of Strauss and Howe and Douglas Copeland, and then we'll call it a night. But have you seen these videos, or talking about not knowing kids? In the chat here, have you seen this trend of like cutting people out of like there's millennials or Gen Z that are cutting their parents and grandparents out of their lives, that they're cutting no contact, that's what it's called, going no contact with your parents and grandparents. And I think a lot of it's over politics, like and the president, but a lot of it's over a lot of the cultural wars that we've been having over the last few years. And so if we have all of these people going no contact with their families, how does that impact these endowments from generation to generation? Nice. Dropped 2 gummies before we started. Yay. Nice. But yeah, I mean, not to sound too, I'm not, I don't doom scroll, and I'm not a doomer by any means, but it feels a lot. I mean, our society is breaking down a bit. Let's just be honest. And so how do these theories apply to a society that's breaking apart? Like these theories in this book have applied to our country as it was created, and even before that, and it went through a civil war and a World War II. But like, can it survive this? With our societal breakdown? We got kids cutting off their parents. We got states red and blue. We've got, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if it feels like our society is ripping. And I just wonder if this, or if that's just the fourth turning, and can we get through it? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I was no contact with said dying uncle for almost a decade. Gotcha. 52 and the youngest member at my church. Yeah. That's the other thing. The lack of third spaces, because everything's about home and work and school and online. Like the third spaces of churches and coffee shops and bars and civic clubs and organizations. Like we're not communities anymore. Everything's online. It's weird. It's just weird. There are ways to connect with older folks, but the fact that you're 52 and the youngest member of your church, I mean, there's no younger generations behind you. That's kind of scary. Yeah, has it been like that way for a while? I'm curious. Well, there has been a bit of a shift in Gen Z. Well, here's the other thing, Joe. Here's the other thing about Gen Z. And let's be honest. The men are conservative, and the women have gone so far left that they're not not connecting anymore, and they won't date each other. And the stark contrast between Gen Z men and Gen Z women is quite shocking when it comes to politics. I've seen a lot of research about it over the last few weeks, and it seems as though the men have stayed pretty firm in their conservative right leaning, but the women have just gone so far left we can't see them anymore. Same, Rebecca, same. Bars are dying. Organized religion has died. I mean, I gotta be honest. It feels like we've had our kids married. We want our kids married in the state. We want them raised by daycares and public schools, and single family homes with no dads, and like we and it's the state. The state is we got all of the state programs and the federal programs. It's like the family unit that it kind of pulled apart. It feels weird. I like family. I'm a big fan of family. I think it's important. Yeah, Gen Z women are literally on Venus. They really are. They really are. And I wonder, like, what does that mean for the future of humanity? Or at least Western civilization? Because I know that there are plenty of cultures that are popping out babies left and right, but American culture is not it right now. Or even Western, or even Western civilization, Western culture, European culture. We're not having kids. I mean, I said Gen Z's been 30% aborted. It just makes you wonder, what does that mean for our, Yep. Yeah, I'm in the Bible Belt, and there's just no children, and there's no families. There's no young families because nobody's getting married and not nobody, but you know what I'm saying. Like the number of people getting married and having children gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And you can't buy a house because things are too expensive, and so you don't have your little neighborhoods where kids are riding their bikes and hanging out together. And so it's just like, what does America look like in 20 years, 30 years, 50 years? I don't know. It's crazy. China's having some issues. I've heard some interesting things about China's population. I've heard that they've overestimated their population, and it's really maybe about half of what they claim. I've heard all kinds of different things. And really, how do you even know? Everything we're told about the globe, everything we're told about politics or history or anything, how do we even freaking know? I don't know what happens across town. Like, I don't know all the details. So like, how do I know what's really going on in other parts of the world? All right, let's wrap this up. Historical parallels underscore universality. America's cycles echo global patterns. The authors in this book argue for foresight by tracing the diagonals, so we can anticipate moods. That's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be anticipating. Not only are we going back in American history, but we're also going to be anticipating through 2063. So that's going to be fun. Yep. A lot of places in China not accessible to the rest of the world. Relax and retire in Shangri-La. That sounds nice. So anyway, as we wrap up this chapter, what it did basically was lay the groundwork for the generational history that we're about to dive into. it's explaining, their terms, the cohorts and the moods and the their peers. So what was that? There was more to it than peers. It was peer personalities. Sorry, peer personalities. So basically, if you ever get a little confused about what they're talking about, this is a good chapter to go back to where they explain kind of their theory and their terms for life. And there's also a glossary is it in this version? Because this thing is so sourced. Yeah, there's a glossary in the back, an index. And like, this thing is crazy sourced. They did their work. So, overall, chapter lays the groundwork for the book's generational history, urging us to view time not as a straight line, but as interwoven diagonals. It's a call to recognize patterns for better decision making, with Gen X positioned as the gritty realists who bridge idealism and rebuilding. Perfect for our book club debate on whether these cycles explain Generation X's cultural icons and ongoing societal roles. Next week, let me bring this up. I probably should have had this up the whole time instead of just sitting here showing you my mug. Boom. All right, so next week, we are going through signed reading is chapter 2, Life Along the Generational Diagonal, and chapter 3, Belonging to a Generation. It is depression. Oh, I'm so glad, Helena. I'm glad you're enjoying it. That makes me so happy. Makes me so happy to hear. Yeah, 2070. Well, 2076. I could possibly live to see 2076. That would make me 99. That's crazy to think about. Oh, I know. The Fourth Turning is Here is good. And I need to go back. I've only listened to The Fourth Turning is Here. I have not actually read the book. The book. It's a lot of homework. Here's the thing. I know it's 2 chapters and it could be a lot of pages. If you don't get through it, that is okay. Well, I mean, you know me. I slow things down a lot. So we might only get through chapter 2 next week, but the goal is 2 chapters, 2 and 3. How many pages is that? Let's find out. Yeah, ask Chat GPT to summarize it for you. That's actually not a terrible idea. I might start doing that. Just to give me like some bullet points. So chapter 2 starts at 43. Chapter 3 starts at 58. It's not too terrible. So it's page 43 to page 68. So 25 pages. I think that's doable. If you do a couple of pages, do 3 or 4 pages a day. Just before you go to bed. That's what I try to do. But sometimes I try to dive in a little bit more. But just to keep myself, up to speed. So, 25 pages. Not too painful. Not too painful. All right, before I let you go, I want to show you. This is from my video, if you haven't seen it, called What is Generation X? It's Complicated. These are a couple of interviews with Strauss and Howe and Douglas Copeland from back in 1991, right when Strauss and Howe wrote their books. So let me bring these up if I can find it. It's one of my older videos. But man, I tell you what, this video just keeps doing its thing. It still gets a lot of views every day, which is crazy. Hold on. Boom. Will the final be an essay or multiple? Oh, it's going to be an essay. You're silly. All right. Here is Douglas Copeland, the man that gave us the name Generation X. We're going to listen to him first, and then we'll listen to Strauss and Howe, and then I think I'll be okay on this one. This was a really fun video to make, and I'm actually going to make an updated version of this video in the next month or two. I just need to get my ass to work. I've been taking way too much time off these last couple weeks. I've let my post Christmas New Year's vacation turn into like a January vacation. All right, here we go. It wasn't until the late 1980s that the term Generation X made its debut in American culture. Author Douglas Copeland, born in 1961, wrote the novel Generation X, Tales for an Accelerated Culture, about a group of friends living together in Southern California around the year 1990. By 1991, the media was starting to notice this group of 20-somethings who were definitely not baby boomers, had been raised by television, and were too young to remember the JFK assassination, the moon landing, and maybe even Watergate. And as they struggled to find a name for these slackers, Copeland's Generation X began to stick.
They're called the Lost Generation, the Baby Busters, those who were born between 1961 and 1971. By many accounts, this post-baby boom generation is...
Yeah, Douglas Copeland defined us as 61 to 71. Because he was convinced, and I think he was right. Basically, he was defining Generation Jones. He just got his years off a little bit. But Generation X is two distinct cohorts. There's the Jonesers, there's the core, or three cohorts actually. There's the Jonesers, which are the cuspers from Boomer to X. There's the core Gen X, which are the late 60s to early to mid 70s babies, and then there's the Zennials, the late 70s to the early 80s. So here we go.
Struggling. They apparently feel the older baby boomers have taken all the good jobs and all the good real estate. They have trouble leaving home, finding careers, and committing to relationships. They are angst-ridden, a bit bitter, and their chief talent seems to be the ironic aside. Writer Douglas Copeland describes their dilemma in his first novel called Generation X, Tales for an Accelerated Culture. Douglas?
The Generation X, or the X generation, it is, I suppose you call it a splinter generation from the baby boom at large, which demographers say begins about 1945 and goes to 1965. That's more than 100 million people. And it's almost too much to expect everyone born in 20 years to share similar ways of thinking and seeing the world. And I've noticed through my own experience in talking to people, and I talk to a lot of people for research, that about 1957 or 1958, there's a real schism in the way the world is perceived. The earlier generation, I call them the Jane Fonda or Steven Spielberg generation of baby boomers.
The gee whiz, we can affect everything generation.
Certainly, yeah. They, and Joni and Woodstock and Peace and Acid, they see the world in the first person plural. It's a we generation, and we see it this way. And after about 57, 58, up to about 1970, after which you have a group I call the Benetton Youth, or the Young Republicans in Love.
That would be me.
You have the X generation, which sometimes called 20-something. I think that's a misnomer, because in a few years we're going to be mid-30-something, late 20-something. They're very much the individual generation. I refuse to say that we see the world this way, or us. That's not fair. I speak for myself and not for someone, Susan, who lives in Iowa City, Iowa, or Dave in Sacramento. It's very much, it's almost like the ultimate extension of what happens when you give people unlimited access to individualism.
I want you to set me straight. If whining is unfair, it's where's my piece of the pie? Where is this?
I think what we're seeing is calling whining is maybe actually a birth cry or a birth pain. 2 years ago when I was selling the book, there was not even 20-something was not even a word back then. And I encountered an extraordinary amount of opposition, even to the fact that this generation might exist. And I was very lucky in finding St. Martin's to publish the book.
Did your generation grow up without any barriers, boundaries, without any parameters? Were there not enough rules so that at least you had rules to break?
Unfortunately, there were no real rules to break. The rules had all been broken by then. So it was an arbitrary culture or no grounding. And it was a culture of divorce, pacer automobiles, Jimmy Carter. Just there's this new awareness of this being a group, a separate entity. And it's like just waking up and, oh boy, this is our situation. And humans,
which is healthy.
And humans being humans, of course, the tendency is to complain a bit.
If you are not the make love, not war generation,
No.
and if you are not the drug generation,
No.
What is the defining characteristic of your generation?
I think irony, a tendency to make media-based jokes, Scooby-Doo jokes. But Scooby-Doo goes, hello? Like that. And we will find that perhaps amusing. And also, if I ask you a question, you give me a wrong answer, I'll go, like you just lost on Family Feud. And that's the way we format our world, because when our brains are being molded, we watch TV, and that's how we formatted it. Real inability to commit to relationships. I mean, I know people who've been going out for 10 years now and have just announced their engagement. And even then, they won't be getting married for another 3-4 years.
Why does that happen? What are they afraid of?
Divorce. Clothing from the Gap and Banana Republic, which is generic, label-free, like clothing you might see illustrated in the dictionary. I noticed record collections. Most people who are X generation are fanatic about alphanumerically encoding their record collection by style, genre, artist. And if you want to drive them nuts, you simply misfile one of their Clash albums and they'll go berserk. It's stability, order. There is a definite perception that unless this generation takes care of the world, then it's going to be lost, because the generation that comes after us, and that's just a generational conceit, doesn't seem too concerned about history or the past, and nor does the generation before.
Douglas, you just told me you wouldn't have to take a mech job because of this book.
Job, that's
what is
right.
a mech job?
Well, I define a mech job in the book as let me get it correct, a low prestige, low dignity, low pay, no future job in the service sector, which is frequently considered a just wonderful career opportunity by people who have maybe never had to have one. The X presence is very strongly being felt in the workplace right now.
I hear a little bitterness in all of this, because these are the college graduates who feel that the future is not only problematic, it's just downright difficult.
Well, it's a numbers game. There simply are more people ahead of them. It means downsizing your expectations of 2 cars in a garage to maybe 1 car on street parking.
If those are your expectations, if those things are important to you, then it's very difficult if you're in your 20s to all of a sudden be downsizing your expectations. But you write this book and you talk about the haves. You're not really talking about the have-nots. There are a lot of have-nots in the Generation X.
It's composed maybe 90% of have-nots and maybe 40% of never-will-haves. And this is relevant only in the context that they were raised with the expectation of being a have for the rest of their life.
Not long after Copeland's novel was published, authors William Strauss and Neil Howe developed their Strauss-Howe generational theory, and they named Generation X 13ers. Well, no, he's not necessarily an expert, but he was one of the first people to start this conversation about a generation behind the baby boomers, to start this idea that we are not, there are this group of people that are not like this group, that are not like this group. So no, he's not an expert, and he's born in 1961, so from his definition, he is a Gen Xer or a Joneser. Again, remember, this is from the early days of this kind of theory. So, I just find it interesting to hear what the thoughts were in the minds of the men who, started this conversation. What's 130%? The 13th generation. They go into... Let me go back.
X.
It's composed maybe 90% of have-nots and maybe 40% of never-will-haves. And this is... Well,
okay, I see what you're saying. I think he meant out of the 90%, 40 of them will never have anything. The have-nots and will never have.
relevant only in the context that they were raised with the expectation of being a have for the rest of their life.
Not long after Copeland's novel was published, authors William Strauss and Neil Howe developed their Strauss-Howe generational theory, and they named Generation X 13ers, or the 13th generation. They go into major detail about this post-baby boom generation in their books, Generations and 13th Gen, Abort, Ignore, Retry, Fail. If you find this kind of thing interesting, I cannot recommend their books enough, especially their 1997 book, The Fourth Turning, which predicts the future in ways that will blow your mind. And it's all based on their generational theory that describes a recurring generation cycle in both American and Western history. According to their theory, historical events are associated with recurring generational personas or archetypes, and each generational persona unleashes a new era they call a turning that lasts about 20 years. And in each turning, a new social, political, and economic climate exists. I'm actually going to do a video about this in the future. That video I'm going to do about this in the future, that's this book club, and then I'm going to do another video here soon on this. It only took me a year after I promised it. So here's Strauss and Howe talking about the 13th generation back in 1991. Here we go.
The most important thing to look for in defining a generation is how the members of that generation define themselves. The 13th generation in American history, dating back to Benjamin Franklin, these are the 13th to know the American nation and flag. They also are faced with a real hard luck life cycle reminiscent of what the old lost generation knew. The number 13 is a good reflection of that. It's also a slippery label, something that the kids themselves like because they're tired of being criticized by elders, being told that they're part of a bust, a baby bust group that is disappointing when compared with the boom.
One thing we talk about with the 13th generation is how attitudes toward children changed very dramatically in the early 1960s and through the 1970s. The 13th generation are the first babies people took pills not to have. And as the 1960s went on, we saw a new kind of movie come into national popularity, the Rosemary's Baby, the Exorcist type film, which depicted the child as devil, as bad, mean, and selfish. Many of the 13ers today in their late 20s remember that period, and their sense of identity, their sense of self has in some ways been permanently shaped by that. Today, by contrast, since the early 1980s, we've had a whole new batch of cuddly baby movies. Today, with the emergence of yet a new generation, babies are to be protected. We see baby on board bumper stickers everywhere, and people think that children must be given a better national mission and must be given structure as children.
Okay.
And we call them the millennial generation.
The ones that were born in between 1982 and the year 2003.
Right.
Kids who are presently in third grade and younger.
It's when we saw a sudden change in people's attitudes toward divorce, toward family, towards structure and discipline in schools, a rethinking of many of the assumptions and the educational experiments that went wrong, that many people in retrospect believe went wrong during the 1970s.
I don't know. It's hard to put a label on my generation because...
There we go. Yeah, no more at 10 p.m. where, do you know who your kids are? But see, we've had another change since then, right? In how, societal, the mood about family, children, all of that. It's weird. It's weird. All right, guys. So what do you think? Are you enjoying this book? I know I am. Got a good book to read, a kind of new setup here. It's a little weird, but I'm getting used to it. Yeah, Strauss passed away. That's Neil Howe, right? I get him confused. That's the one. That's the one that. Hold on, I took him down. I'm just here looking at my screen. Share screen. So this here is William Strauss, I believe. Yeah, that's William Strauss. He passed away in 2007. And then Neil Howe is this guy right here, and he's still alive. Oh, I'm so glad you're liking the book club. Yay, loving the book club. It's fun. I'm really enjoying this too. It's just, I just didn't want to I didn't want my channel to be told this entirely about TV shows and movies, even though that's my favorite thing in the whole world. But I just wanted to he's a playwright, yes. I just wanted to dive a little bit more into, our place in the world and who we are as human beings and Americans and our place in our society. I think it's really, really interesting, and I'm so glad that you guys are coming along on the ride with me. Now, don't forget, tomorrow night we are in Little House on the Prairie mode over on the Discord. We're watching episodes 2 and 3. Thursday night we're watching episodes 3 and 4 of Incredible Hulk, and then Friday I'll be back for the next live stream, my so-called live stream. I'm working on my next video. I thought I would get it out this last weekend, but January has been my lazy month, so I haven't gotten it done yet. I'm sorry. So hopefully it'll be out soon. Yep, Strauss was part of Capital Steps, and we'll talk about that next week, about what Capital Steps was. So they both had a lot to, both were doing a lot in Washington, D.C. in the 80s and 90s. So they were both really into it. 13th Gen will be, 13th Gen will be easier. This is not the easiest book to read, but, it's introducing their theory, and they put a lot of information on the table, and I think it's neat to kind of go through. Yep, exactly. The foundation of their theories that they build everything upon depends on the groundbreaking work in this book. Perfectly said, Grendelson. So that's why we started with it. So if you guys are good with our discussion tonight, if you don't have any more questions for me, I will see you back here next Tuesday for chapters 2 and 3. And then I'll see you guys tomorrow night to watch Little House with me. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me tonight. I super appreciate it. And I will see you all next week. Thanks, guys. Bye.